The stories presented in this video are real, but we have changed the characters' names and altered images to protect their identities. The creator of this video is not an investigative officer. These narratives have been sourced from various internet platforms. Our intent is not to accuse or target anyone in particular. Thank you for understanding.
Seeing your favorite musician or band at a live event can be a really emotional experience. Consider this. Even though you may have grown up hearing a particular band or artist on the radio, seeing them live and having the opportunity to engage with them in some tiny manner is a whole other experience. Morgan Harrington, 20, was probably feeling the same way and was eagerly awaiting October 17, 2009. Morgan was ecstatic to see her favorite band, Metallica, perform live at the University of Virginia's John Paul Jones Arena in Charlottesville. Morgan would not only have to miss the performance she had been anticipating for months, but she would also disappear on that fateful day. Welcome to True Crime Stories Hub, your go-to channel for daily true crime documentaries. Each day, we dive into chilling real-life cases, unraveling shocking mysteries and uncovering hidden truths. From infamous crimes to unsolved puzzles, our documentaries bring you the stories that will keep you hooked. Tune in every day for your dose of gripping true crime content. On July 24, 1989, Morgan Harrington was born in Charlottesville, Virginia, to Dan and Gil Harrington. During the time this instance occurred, she was a typical young woman or girl with a sibling named Alex. Morgan's family also described her as somewhat of a homebody. Despite having a strong circle of friends, she wasn't exactly the sort to go out every night and liked to spend her time at home whenever possible. Morgan's mother used just 4 words to describe her: radiant, affectionate, lovely, and unique. Among other things, Morgan desired to make a positive impact on the world and was an advocate for children's rights. Morgan carefully considered her college major because she was aware of this. She wanted to work with and for children, and she had a strong enthusiasm for teaching. Morgan attended Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg, Virginia, after graduating early from high school. However, despite attending university, she stayed in close contact with her parents and always made time to visit them when she had free time. Overall, Morgan was eager to see what life had in store and was extremely near to realizing her aspirations. Morgan was ideal for Virginia Tech since she would be able to work for a worthy cause by instructing the next generation. Morgan enjoyed live concerts and music when she wasn't studying. Metallica was her favorite band. In actuality, Metallica posters dominated the walls of Morgan's room. As an outsider looking in, I must admit that Morgan is about the last person I would anticipate becoming a Metallica fan. Well done, though. They're a fantastic band. But according to Morgan's relatives and friends, she is the best hugger in the world. Morgan was definitely touchy-feely, unlike other folks. She wasn't the type to nod or shake hands casually. She desired more. Morgan also has a close relationship with her brother and parents. The fact that Morgan's family never took a minute for granted is the one thing they regret most about her demise. Morgan's family was there for her no matter what. Before they left, they always made sure to say, "I love you." Additionally, they valued time greatly and made every moment with Morgan matter. The family actually had a very unique way of saying, "I love you." Every day as they pulled out of the driveway, Morgan and her mother would sign 241 to one another, which translates to, "I love you too much, forever and again." You tend to remember the tiny things like this for the rest of your life. And in this instance, these small actions undoubtedly left an impression on Gil, as 241 would be the final document Morgan signed for her mother before she vanished forever. Morgan's long-awaited day finally arrived on October 17, 2009. It was the day of Metallica's massive performance at the University of Virginia's John Paul Jones Arena in Charlottesville. Morgan was bouncing off the walls with excitement, trying to control herself, and Metallica was to her what Taylor Swift is to Swifties. As if that weren't enough, Morgan had been anticipating the day she would finally see her favorite band perform live for months, and she had even placed the concert tickets on her refrigerator. It served as a reminder each time she passed her kitchen, and Morgan always smiled when she saw the tickets. At last, the concert day arrived. After driving to the arena, Morgan waited for the show to begin with 3 of her closest friends. Morgan eventually found herself outside the arena after searching for a restroom during the opening act's performance. It's unknown why Morgan departed the arena, but this was strange considering there were 18 female facilities available to the attendees. We just don't know, but it's likely that she simply happened to go past the restrooms without noticing them and ended up outside the venue. In any case, Morgan returned to the arena but was denied entry. You see, Morgan had the ticket, but she was unable to convince security to let her back in because of the arena's rigorous no re-entry policy at the time. Morgan made the decision to leave the arena completely and simply find a way to return home, even though she was plainly disappointed that she was unable to see her favorite band perform live. In the meantime, Morgan's pals discovered that she had been locked out when they called her at approximately 8:48 p.m. after seeing that she hadn't returned. Morgan assured her pals that there was nothing to worry about and that she would simply return home. It wasn't like Morgan was lost or didn't know how to go home because she knew Charlottesville like the back of her hand. The majority of her possessions, with the exception of her phone and pocketbook, were with her pals inside the arena, so she simply lacked a car and money to facilitate the trip. Unfortunately, though, Morgan would never speak to anyone again after this. She simply vanished after this phone conversation with pals. On October 18th, Morgan was scheduled to see her parents the following day. This visit was a win-win situation for Morgan because she required her dad's assistance with some math difficulties, and she also had to visit her parents for their weekly get-together. However, Morgan did not respond when her parents texted and called to ask when she would arrive. None of the messages were read, and none of the calls were returned. Gil and Dan were appalled to hear that Morgan had been split apart when they called her pals who were with her at the arena that evening. Morgan's parents were afraid that Morgan might be having problems. Was she in a dangerous place since she had neither money nor a car? Was she having problems? In their minds, Morgan's parents were struggling with one question after another. The police were quickly involved, and 20-year-old Morgan was reported missing. When the detectives inquired about Morgan's last known location, some witnesses said they saw him at approximately 9:30 p.m. begging for a ride on a nearby bridge. Shortly after leaving the venue, Morgan was spotted with 3 males by another group of witnesses. Additionally, a discarded shirt with bloodstains was found by a bystander close to the arena where Morgan was last seen. It goes without saying that this was bad news. This shirt was found and taken in as evidence by the police. The officers were taken aback by everything. Could Morgan's absence and radio silence be attributed to these 3 men? Did Morgan own this shirt? And above all, what was happening? Someone made a finding as the investigators were attempting to fit things together. At UVA's Lanigan Athletic Field, someone noticed something in the RV lot. It was an abandoned handbag. It had a phone with the batteries taken out and identification. Police were summoned within minutes, and they were able to identify Morgan Harrington, 20, as the owner of the items. Dan and Gil were devastated to learn of this discovery. Morgan was meant to visit their home for a few days, but she had vanished from sight. They were traveling to a very dark place in their brains, and it was becoming more and more difficult to escape this gloomy thinking pattern every day. As much as I would like to think that the discovery of Morgan's purse accelerated the inquiry, that was unfortunately not the case. Simply put, there were no leads. Although the police were making every effort to locate Morgan, time was simply slipping away. Suddenly, 3 months had passed with no trace of Morgan, and everyone's hopes of finding him alive and uninjured were dwindling. when a farmer discovered a terrifying discovery on January 26, 2010, that thinking quickly became a terrifying reality. About 10 miles from the John Paul Jones Arena, on the expansive grounds of the 742-acre Anchorage farm, human bones were discovered. The remains were brought in for DNA identification after the police were contacted. Despite the fact that it had been months and the remains were in appalling shape, Morgan Harrington, 20, was tragically identified as the deceased. Although Morgan's mother, Gil, was able to corroborate that the attack on her had been savage and that she was unfortunately taken advantage of, the investigators did not formally divulge the facts of her death. It is heartbreaking to consider how an exhilarating night out could go so horribly wrong so soon. The red-stained clothing discovered in 2009, the year Morgan was last seen, was subjected to forensic testing by April 2010. The garment, which regrettably belonged to Morgan, shows how horrific and upsetting the attack on Morgan was. The investigators couldn't figure it out. They were certain that Morgan's murderer was a local. An outsider couldn't have known that the spot where Morgan's body was discovered was essentially in the middle of nowhere and that no one ever went there. Someone from Charlottesville must have been involved, as they were aware that this location was ideal for concealing a body. The authorities were fortunate to have some sort of lead, and it came in the form of DNA. As you can see, Morgan's crime was connected to another violent assault and kidnapping in Fairfax by means of DNA evidence. In 2005, this case occurred. A woman who goes by the handle RG and who requested anonymity was brutally assaulted and exploited on September 24, 2005, as she was returning home from a grocery shop run at approximately 8:30 p.m. The violence of the incident was such that RG lost consciousness. RG was literally in danger of dying at the hands of the man. Fortunately, the attacker fled upon spotting headlights in the distance. RG was taken by the man from the car to the hospital for a DNA test, which at the time did not match any offenders in the database. RG was so severely affected by this experience that she had to return to her homeland to recuperate for a while, if one can ever fully recover from such an experience. The investigators were therefore positive that the same man was the culprit. After creating a composite sketch using the DNA, they looked to the general public for any information about this enigmatic and blatantly aggressive man. Crime Stoppers offered a $100,000 reward for any information on the murderer and his location during the course of the investigation and hunt. In response, Metallica also came forward, increased the reward to $150,000, and even used a video message to make a public appeal. The local community and detectives were making every effort to identify the person responsible for Morgan's horrific murder and RG's attack. Unfortunately, though, things took a turn for the worst at this point. The murderer had not been apprehended after 5 long years, and to make matters worse, he was going to commit another murder. It was September 2014, nearly 5 years after Morgan's sudden death and disappearance. At this moment, the investigators felt powerless. Sadly, Morgan had passed away. RG was devastated and mentally wounded by a significant event, and now the murderer was back at it, targeting a different student this time. Hannah Graham, a British student at the University of Virginia, was 18 years old. Hannah vanished on the dreadful day of September 14, 2014. In the morning, she was spotted at Charlottesville's downtown mall, and later that night, she attended to various parties with her friends. Hannah decided to call it a night and head home at the second party of the evening. It was just after 1 in the morning, and Hannah was pretty drunk. Hannah texted her friend to let them know she was lost and attempting to find her way home. Sadly, this was Hannah's final conversation with anyone. "I just wanted to jump in and say something. Almost single case I cover involves someone leaving a party or bar by themselves at night, and I'm so tired of it. This is such an easy problem to fix. Keep your pals from being lost or in danger. I don't care if you have to physically detain them, take their keys, or anything else. If your pals are in any way intoxicated, never allow them go out into the world, and if they are sober, don't let them go out alone either. People could easily prevent situations like these if they would just watch out for one another. In any case, Hannah's absence from her friends' meeting the following day alarmed them right away. On September 15, 2014, 18-year-old Hannah Graham was reported missing after being contacted by her parents. Fortunately, the authorities were able to track Hannah's last movements and her whereabouts before her disappearance after reviewing CCTV footage this time. Hannah was observed strolling by herself after midnight in a number of places, including outside a pub, across from a nearby gas station, and at a pizza business around 1:06 a.m. But it was at this point that the detectives became aware of something really unsettling. Someone was pursuing Hannah. Even though the man was far behind her, it was obvious that he was following Hannah everywhere. The enigmatic man was initially on the opposite side of the street, but he immediately headed for Hannah after spotting her. Witnesses told the cops that the man had a very odd air about him when they asked around. He didn't appear to be friendly. He once went up to Hannah and led her to a bar where they hung out for a while. Hannah obviously didn't need any more drinks, so the man angrily offered her more. Hannah and the same man were seen by another witness in an orange 1998 Chrysler Sabre. Hannah's yell, "I'm not getting in that car with you," was audible to him. The investigators were aware that this enigmatic individual might have the secret to solving Morgan's case, Hannah's, and perhaps RG's as well. The parallels were simply too clear. The same location was where the disappearances occurred. The man specifically targeted young women who were college students. Thus, the hunt for this individual began. However, Hannah's family would experience a similar tragedy to the Harringtons 5 weeks later when Hannah's remains were found while the police were looking for the perpetrator. Human remains were found at an abandoned property on October 18, 2014, by Chesterfield County Sheriff's Office searchers. Hannah Graham, age 18, was confirmed identified as the deceased. At first, the investigators did not disclose the official cause of death. However, Hannah's cause of death was reported as uncertain on November 18, 2014. However, based on what detectives were able to learn, her death appeared to have been somewhat similar to Morgan Harrington's. Even though Hannah's death was heartbreaking, it helped the detectives get a better understanding of the man responsible for this massive terror attack. The man who was seen following Hannah in the CCTV clip was eventually identified by the authorities. This was Jesse Leroy Matthew Jr., age 32. In Charlottesville, Virginia, he worked as a cab driver and a nursing assistant. Jesse's childhood was quite difficult. It is terrible that Jesse was used as a child, but rather of overcoming this tragedy, he buried his emotional scars deep inside himself and eventually became angry, dark, and extremely hostile of women. As he became older, he enrolled at Christopher Newport University in Newport News after first attending the Evangelical Christian Liberty University in Lynchburg. He was a suspect in violent assaults against women at both campuses, which led to his final departure from the CNU football squad in September 2003. Let's fast forward to 2007. Jesse worked as a cab driver in the Charlottesville region after obtaining a DMV permit. It is thought that Jesse assaulted RG brutally when he was graduating from college and obtaining his driver's license. Subsequently, when Morgan vanished in October 2009, investigators thought that she had met Jesse, who had chosen to exploit this vulnerable young woman by pretending to transport her home. Now fast forward to September 2014. The police think Hannah experienced the same thing, but given that she was clearly heard refusing to get into his car, it appears likely that he coerced her into doing so. Because of all of this, the investigators were able to secure a search warrant for the man's house and vehicle. Hannah's fingerprints were discovered by the police on the car's passenger side door. Additionally, the investigators found a pair of shorts with Jesse and Hannah's DNA on them and a phone in the flat with a SIM card still in it. On September 24, 2014, Jesse was formally identified by the cops as a suspect in Hannah's disappearance. The location of Jesse at the time of Hannah's disappearance was also determined by the detectives. CCTV footage shows him moving from bar to pub, getting beaten up, and acting violently and improperly in front of women. After a while, Jesse went to police headquarters and requested permission from the authorities to consult with a lawyer about Hannah's situation. However, he was charged with speeding as he was leaving, which is how they initially obtained the arrest warrant. Jesse, however, had other ideas. After this episode, he was on the run and nearly instantly drained his bank account. Fortunately, he was discovered by investigators camped on Gilchrist Beach in Galveston, Texas, 2 days later on September 24, 2014. He was immediately taken into custody. At long last, everything began to come together. The DNA on RG and Hannah's shorts that were retrieved from Jesse's apartment matched that from Morgan's remains. Jesse was pinned for all 3 offenses in every bout. On September 15, 2015, Jesse was officially charged with first-degree murder and abduction in connection with the murder of Morgan Harrington, marking the final day that he would be held accountable for his heinous and fatal deeds. October 24, 2017, was the date of his trial. But before this could take place, on March 2 of 2016, Jesse pleaded guilty to all of the accusations, including the murder charges of Hannah and the assault and attempted murder charges on RG in 2005. Jesse entered a guilty plea as part of a deal. In essence, the death penalty would not be an option if Jesse entered a guilty plea to all of the counts and forfeited his chance to later challenge this ruling. In the Morgan and Hannah instances, Jesse Matthews was ultimately given 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of release. For the assault and attempted murder of RG, Jesse received 3 further life terms. Jesse would never see the light of day and would be imprisoned for the rest of his life. According to multiple news sources, Jesse Matthews was just diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer in May 2019. Jesse was moved from Red Onion State Prison to Sussex State Prison for treatment after informing the relatives of the victims. Since he is still alive today, perhaps an exception might be made for a deranged man like Jesse who feels entitled to torment women, even though no one should ever wish such a thing upon anyone. I simply don't feel sorry for this man. When Morgan's mother, Gil, learned of Jesse's illness, her reaction was far more sympathetic. Whatever justice is, maybe this is the next step in his justice, she continued. This might be his karma. The idea that Jesse Matthews had a 10-year history of abusing women through violent attacks is beyond horrifying. Please keep in mind that these are only the attacks that we are aware of. Jesse may potentially be connected to a number of cold cases and missing persons cases that have happened in Virginia. Unfortunately, we will never know because there is no indisputable proof or DNA evidence. Knowing how many people Jesse has targeted and the fact that there must be countless victims of this horrible monster out there who have not received justice makes me wonder which is more terrifying. The Harrington and Graham families' loved ones became even closer after the horrors that befell them, and they supported one another while Jesse was being sought. Knowing that there are individuals by your side who have experienced the same hurt as you and are working to ease your pain is such an oddly reassuring sensation. Hannah and Morgan were both weak and defenseless, and when a monster with an inexplicable grudge against women put his sights on them, 2 innocent and unwary women were tragically thrust directly into the clutches of death. Even though Hannah's death was tragic, it served as the catalyst for Jesse's demise and subsequent incarceration. Gil and Dan Harrington created the non-profit Help Save the Next Girl in response to this horrific incident. It is an honorary non-profit organization founded not just to honor Morgan and everything she stood for, but also to encourage anybody who want to defend themselves from evil, cultivate positive interpersonal relationships, and offer outreach assistance to victims' families experiencing comparable tragedies. Additionally, Virginia Tech established the Morgan Dana Harrington Memorial Scholarship to recognize students for their academic excellence and undergraduate interests. Additionally, the Orphan Medical Network International, or OMNI, an organization that offers medical care to orphans and anybody else in need in Africa, has brought Morgan's legacy of aiding underprivileged children and educating people about children's difficulties to life. To honor Hannah's legacy, the Hannah E. Graham Memorial Scholarship was established in 2021 in recognition of her commitment to and involvement in Northern Virginia softball leagues. After their unfathomable losses, we can only hope that Morgan and Hannah's families have managed to move on with their lives. Because although Morgan, RG, and Hannah may no longer be in pain, their families must endure this hurt for the rest of their lives. The fact that this individual is allowed to continue living his life while incarcerated disgusts me. However, it's simply not that simple for these families. We appreciate your interest in this new True Crime Stories Hub episode. As always, though, please remember to subscribe and see this other fascinating case I discussed if you like this video. It just keeps you updated on all of my upcoming videos and is completely free. However, I'm Ty Knotts, and I'll see you all at the next one.